Sometimes the best ideas demand a second chance, so this time I'm making an incredibly complex bed using some new spiral gears to create flowing designs, templates to add fluid curves, and a little bit of texture to add even more dimension to the whole mix. Let's just hope that this build doesn't burn me.
My hand just keeps burning and burning. Well, I got some more rustic walnut, and for some reason this project makes me want to nap. Toby too.
I was able to get some really nice boards again, and just like last time, they were essentially half price because here in Colorado, I can get rustic walnut for half the price of premium. And the main difference between the two is the rustic has some knots, bark inclusions, cracks, and even piths going down the center of the board, which is the center of the tree, while premium walnut is not supposed to have cracks, knots, whatever it may be, but the funny thing is it still does. So in this case, I'd rather pay half price, use the beautiful grained portions of the boards, than save the rustic for a different project. In case you're wondering, I usually buy 8-quarter walnut, which is about 2 inches or 50 millimeters, give or take. And that thickness just offers me more flexibility with my projects. If I need thinner boards, then I can just resaw them. To start building an actual bed, I need two main things, a headboard and a footboard. And these two components can be built all sorts of different ways. For this bed though, I'm going to make large flat panels, then carve and shape those into the actual form that I want. So I need to get rid of any gaps in between these boards so that they joint together seamlessly. I remember when I was a beginner woodworker with a very small shop, I relied solely on the straight cuts of a table saw for my joinery, which truthfully also works, but no doubt using the right machine gets an incredibly nice joint. Let's try this Boss Dog brown glue. In the past, I've tried other dark glues and they seem to stain the joint, so I want to see if this one does a better job. The usual purpose for these glues is to fill any voids with a darker color glue so that it matches the wood. In this case, the joints are literally dead perfect, so I don't need it, but I still want to test if it darkens the joints. That way you guys know whether it's going to be useful for you. Now that the panels are flat, they're still not quite useful to me yet. I need square edges to go off of so I can lay everything out properly. You'll see the importance of this pretty soon. And by the way, those joints came out great. They don't break on the joint line and there's no staining at all.
Okay, these are smaller than I was expecting. So I totally could have used my new CNC by Onefinity to flatten those slabs, but I already accidentally drilled a hole in this table, so I feel like I probably need some practice before I go cutting into walnut.
Besides, I'll have really cool ways to integrate this CNC into future designs, but for this one, let's just do it by hand, baby. So you just saw me mark with the template, and that's the general shape of where the footboard will be cut. And now I can find specific spots to put screws in, and these will actually get carved away later.
Yes, I remembered to screw it down this time. I realized that this came loose. I have to now get it back into position exactly.
And this filament happens to be glow-in-the-dark filament if you didn't know that existed.
So since this gear is so small, I actually had to make a custom small bearing specifically designed for this router. And it definitely took a few iterations to get right because some were too tight, some were too loose. But now all I have to do is just print 2 pieces and they just snap together, and they also register in the holes of the gear so that it's perfect every time.
The silly part is my base plate on my router is stuck on because I stripped a screw. So a little cutting action with a Dremel and a flathead screwdriver later, we could actually get the freaking thing off. Remember how we were supposed to be routing a cool design? Well, I kind of just wanted to show you the true nature of a wood shop. You would think that each task would just go nice and smoothly, but oftentimes it's getting ready for the dang task that's the hard part. Well, until you have a stroke of genius.
Aha! Gotcha.
The weird thing is I just got new screws and none of them cross-threaded. So I don't know what the deal was before, but now we are good to go. At this point, I have 3D printed gears, the spinning mount for the router, as well as the dust collection port. The tiny V-groove bit that I'm using plunges into the surface really easily, and it makes this whole entire process of using the gears a lot easier. I think it's obvious that this first pattern is really small, and you'll see why soon.
So there's first pass. It ended up actually perfect. And the difference between this one and my first spirograph is that I made this only 3 passes until it finishes the geometry. And instead, I'm actually switching hole locations on the gear itself. And that's what's gonna make the more elaborate pattern.
So all I have to do is flip it to hole number 2, screw it back in, and click the router back on. It's ready to go. What's beneficial about the router clicking on is that it can't fly up and off and destroy the art piece. This just makes things a little bit more stupid proof.
So this bit is making a world of difference. It's so incredibly sharp. I'm getting basically no tear out. And along with this cool design of how it works, it's super easy.
It's interesting to see as I progress through the cuts how different the shape ends up looking.
All right, well, what can I say? That worked out really well. I think just doing 3 passes for each one made it a lot easier, and that's just the footboard, so let's do the headboard now.
So the headboard is just a teeny bit more complicated. The outside gear has opposing curves while the inside gear remains circular. This should make for a pretty interesting shape and therefore a pretty awesome design. Just as before, we need to start with knowing where the shapes are going to be. And I'm glad that all of these complicated templates were so incredibly easy to make thanks to the new H2S by Bambu Lab. This machine is really cool because it incorporates a lot of the useful aspects of the H2D, like the active heated chamber for advanced filaments, top and rear venting for fine temperature control, a quick release nozzle that takes seconds to change, and the largest build volume that Bambu has to offer. Which is why it's so useful for making large projects like these templates. But the main differences with the H2S is they simplified the machine by using one nozzle that's fed by their high-end servo motor extruder, which gives easier access to the full build plate volume. So this is perfect if you want large industrial grade accuracy and lightning fast printing speeds at a more affordable cost for those of you who don't need 2 nozzles, but still want that large build volume and options for upgrades. Like this absolutely amazing laser cutter and engraver that you can switch to in about 5 seconds. My favorite part actually is the overhead camera that you can use to read your project on the bed and position any new designs accordingly in Bambu Suite. Plus 5 flame sensors as well as an emergency stop button keep the machine extremely safe. It's things like these that make Bambu Lab's entire ecosystem so perfect. So if this inspires you to get your own personal manufacturing hub to make what you love, the H2S will definitely be exactly what you need. And if you don't know how to 3D model, no problem. They have Maker World where you can get all sorts of free 3D models. Just feel free to use my link in the description to let them know who inspired you because it helps the channel. Thanks.
So instead of fixing that little mishap now, I think I'm just gonna restart where I was and do the 4 total passes and see if it gets cut away anyways. That's super cool. On to the next one.
So for this specific gear ratio, I believe it's 4 or 5 passes, and they're a little bit tricky because of the different curves, but I think it's really unique and quite complex, which is what I'm going for with this bed.
Do you like it, Bubs? Well, that worked just as I planned. That tiny little nick spot, I almost got rid of it, but it's still there, so I'll fix that later. There's gonna need to be a lot of cleanup anyways, but for now I'm gonna move on to shaping everything else.
Now you can see how these screw holes will get cut away because I'm using new templates. And instead of providing the outside shape like this template, these will allow me to cut away inner sections of shapes, which will give the footboard as well as the headboard much more dimension so it's not just flat. So essentially it'll make it look like it's complex joinery of panels without even having to be more than one.
I just realized that I actually need to start with the other template, so this has to come off. Very carefully. I don't know where my head is at today, but I should have rough cut that first. I have to take this one off now. Some strong freaking tape, man. It's like it's super glued on there. There we go.
Yet another annoying lesson learned. Just place the templates without double stick tape, mark them off, and then pre-cut them on the bandsaw. The rest of that material will be cut off with a router and that template. I just need to get rid of some of this waste first so that the router's not working so hard.
Perfect.
I personally prefer using the Astra-coated bits from Bits and Bits because they are like ungodly sharp and I get basically no tear out with them, and I can route up the grain, down the grain, across the grain, and I don't get any blown out chunks. With that said, I do have affiliate links in the description if you happen to want to try these, and we're going to use several different types throughout the video. Oh yeah, she's nice. And now that the outside shape is cut out, I'm back to that original template that will cut out inset sections and make a cool profile out of this footboard. There's quite a lot of material to remove, so I'm just going really slowly and trying to keep my router as stable as I can, and only attack the edge that's around the template, not even worrying about the center for now. This also doubles as the rest of the bottom profile to the footboard, and with this 3/4 compression bit I can finalize that side. The other side is the same, and for that I'm just going to flip the template. I know I could have printed one giant one to handle both sides, but in this case it was just easy enough to flip it. The center can get cut away just by running the router along it, but I will say it's definitely a little sketchy. And by a little sketchy, I mean a lot of bit sketchy, especially as I get closer to the end. Which I knew wouldn't create the cleanest surface. So back on the router table, I can actually do one last pass, which will be dead straight, dead flat, and give me a really nice surface overall.
All right, so there is one roughed out footboard, and now we can work on the headboard. Let's do it.
Here comes some cool new features to these templates. These click-in modules, they limit where the router can go so that I can route a certain depth right now, but then take those out later and route another depth. So, as promised, these things can just click out and I can route at a more shallow depth now. And this multi-tier and multi-shaped look will just add to that complexity that I was talking about.
Awesome, that two-stage template worked really, really well. Now I think it's safe to cut the rest of the profile out of the headboard. Do you like it more now, Bubbas?
He's definitely a tricky one, if you can't tell. But moving on, we're working on the top of the headboard this time. I'd rather not lug this thing onto the bandsaw, it's just a lot easier using a jigsaw. It can be a little scary though because a jigsaw blade can deflect and cut into the area that you didn't want it to cut into, so just give it a little bit more space and then you'll be pretty good to go. Especially since this compression bit can hog off so much material at once, I just make absolute sure I'm holding onto that router really, really well. And she gets a little dirty in the process too. The side and bottom profiles are also different templates. So I just do my thing, keep doing what I've been doing, and get that shape finalized. Remember how I said I didn't want to lug this thing onto the bandsaw? I don't know what happened. I guess I just wanted to torture myself.
Wow, she's really starting to take shape, but she still seems smaller than I expected.
And I got some ridges because the geometry on the templates was too coarse rather than smooth edges.
So unfortunately, I'm gonna be doing a bunch of sanding to smooth everything out since I missed that. And by I mean Bridget.
Yep, and the lovely Bridget is really good at sanding. Like really, really, really good. These will be the side rails that connect the headboard to the footboard. And while Bridget does us a huge favor and sands her little heart away, I can actually start working on the profile of these things, but I have to follow a certain sequence.
So when I was placing those templates, I made sure to cut away any of the horrible defects like these knots so that these rails can be as strong as they can be. But before I go cutting away my straight lines, I need to make a really large groove on the back.
Right now, the boards have one benefit that I need to take advantage of. They have an actual straight edge that I can reference off of the table saw fence. That straight edge will allow me to cut out a section leaving a ledge, and this ledge will eventually hold the slats, which in turn will hold the mattress. Well, sure, I could have just glued two thinner boards together to do this same thing, but I started off with thicker stock, so I have to cut it away instead.
Whoops, I totally cut the wrong side on this one. It was supposed to be going down this side, so that way they're mirrored. So I'm gonna see if I can just flip this template around and cut this the opposite way anyways, and that'll fix that problem. All right, so that's fixed. I just need to add one more cut right about here so that it's equidistant from the bottom like this one is. Thank you.
All done.
Of course, the depth of this cut was just past the 3-inch capacity of my 10-inch table saw blade, so I'm finalizing it using a straight edge and a router, which is actually really easy. I definitely should have cut these to length before I cut this ledge, so I'm just having to use some blue tape to make sure I don't get crazy bad tear out on the bottom side. You might see that I don't always plan ahead on absolutely every single aspect, and that's probably because I enjoy problem solving and I don't always have to do everything perfectly from start to finish. There's always a way around an obstacle, you just have to try it and gain some experience. And now with those ends square, I can begin cutting the actual profile. At first glance, this build seems like it could be repetitive, but in action, I'm really enjoying the process. It's quite relaxing, and the fact that almost all of the edges aren't straight, it really makes it unique and fun. If you are a creator, I definitely suggest you try something like this where there isn't many straight edges. And if you're not a creator, I hope that you're enjoying watching me do the process. That way you can still get something out of it.
So now we have a finished rail, and we have an arc on the bottom as well as a very light arc on the top. And we also have the shelf that's on the back side, and it's positioned exactly where we needed it to be. So this morning I came to the shop and someone's car was on fire. So I ran in here to get the fire extinguisher and went out there, and it was because she had put the jumper cables on backwards and they were like smoking, and I knew I needed to get them off. So I very quickly pulled one of the jumper cables off, but unfortunately it definitely burnt my hand quite a bit. So I'm using green chilies to ice my hand, and hopefully it doesn't swell up or like turn into huge blisters, because I do need to finish this project. My hand just keeps burning and burning. Man, it is.
Yeah, it's pretty lovely. So one trip to the not so urgent care later.
All right, back from urgent care. They got me all bandaged up. I'm ready to get started on this project for the day. But guess what? The nurse was so nice. She gave me a Spider-Man Band-Aid.
I'm laughing now, but I will tell you that urgent care was not fun. Before we went, Bridget spent like 20 minutes on the phone with them, giving them all of my information. Then when we got there, they asked for all of that information again. They didn't input it from the conversation, which was extremely annoying. Not to mention, as my hand was in searing pain, she asked me to keep signing documents. So I made a joke to her. I was like, if both of my arms were cut off right now, you'd still ask me, please sign here. And guys, I wish I could share the look on her face. She literally like murdered me with her eyes. And I get it, it's not her fault, and in her perception, I'm just another mad customer for the day. But it just sucks that we've gotten to a point of where we have to sign all of our our liabilities away in order to even get medical service. And so, front desk lady, if you happen to be listening to this, you only suck a little bit, but the nurse that gave me the Spider-Man Band-Aid was way cooler. Where the rails connect to the footboard and headboard, there needs to be inserted hardware as well, which means more mortising.
He's using my bandage hand as a hammer.
For these ends, there needs to be 2 more spots cut out to leave room for these hooks. So I just quickly created this jig that'll allow me to use my domino and cut those away basically in an instant. I go into much further detail in Patreon-only videos if you happen to want more information on how I do all the complex parts of this build. And now you can see that the rail has the hooked hardware and it locks into the footboard.
So now I'm just doing the same thing to the headboard, but it's on the face and they're a little bit further in from the edge. All right, I think it's time to put this bed together for the first time. Sweet. Okay, so now we actually need some slats that'll go across these, spaced out about a 1/2 inch or so all the way down. Not bad, actually. Bam! Getting out the big kahuna.
Leaving sharp edges on these slats is kind of a big no-no in the bed world because they can start cutting into the mattress. So a really quick way to bevel these edges is just on the joiner. And you can see it just takes some of that sharpness away. Some beds that maybe you've even had before have strapping that actually keep the slats separated evenly, but I'm worried that if I do it that way on this, then the slats will most likely get pushed out of the way and the mattress will fall down, and that's just a whole nother thing to deal with. So I'm using these spacer blocks instead, which separate them, might I say, perfectly?
All right, it's looking like a bed at this point. It might look finished, but I have a few more different details to create so that this looks well-rounded and just absolutely amazing in the end.
And this is the reason why I was worried that those slats would get pushed out of the way. Mr. Toby Bubs here is a good boy, but he's a little unpredictable.
You can see in the design, there's reasons that there's dips, and it's so that his paws don't hit as much when they're over the edge. And after this rail is rounded over, it'll be quite comfortable for his paws. And he thinks he agrees. It's nice and soft and it has some spring to it. Yeah, some spring. Oh, And I made 2 of them, with the other one having different designs that are lighter and more ribbony.
And that's exactly why I used this hardware. That way it can come apart and get put back together really easily, because one of these is going to be for sale and you can have your choice on which one. Not only that, but you can choose which footboard and which headboard you want, and we'll make your dog a custom laser etched name tag to go on the side. So some of you may not like this part of the design, but trust me, give it some time and it'll start looking even better. But I think that it adds that complexity that I've been looking for. Wait a second, am I making high-end beds for dogs right now? Or at least that's the thought going through my mind while I texture these things for hours and hours. But isn't good art, or good furniture for that matter, about starting a conversation? Imagine someone walking in your home and seeing your dog bed is fancier than your own bed. That for some reason time was taken and every detail was perfected. Like this massive bullnose profile, I'm not just using a router bit, that's just to take off some of the material. Then I can take off the rest of the material with a rotary sander, which seems kind of sketchy at first, but over time, slowly but surely, it does take shape. These are the things that I do for furniture that might very well get chewed up.
Weird. Woo!
This project has been quite a new type of inspiration for me. Putting so much time and effort into something for dogs might seem kind of crazy to some people. But I don't just see dogs as dogs. In fact, most dogs have more emotion than a lot of people that I know. They're capable of unconditional love and some of the strongest companionship I've ever seen. Toby, at least, is capable of living his life with pure joy. Unlike myself, I really have to work for that joy. But having him around is important for me and Bridget because his joy is infectious. We get to live vicariously through his unfiltered silliness, much like a lot of you probably do through your children. So the truth is, yeah, he deserves the best, and sure, he probably won't even know how nice of a bed he truly has, but I think he already showed during the tests that he does love it and he'll definitely enjoy it for years to come. So this video reminds me of the old saying that's usually said after something gets broken and someone says, "See, this is why we can't have nice things." But if there's one takeaway from this project, I would say that it's still important to put effort into things that might not last. Nothing has to be permanent. I would even go far enough to say that most things in life are actually temporary, even if we don't intend them to be. And I know it's funny that these beds are built to last a really long time, but they're ironically made for dogs. But that's just it. Things don't always have to make sense. I mentioned earlier that there's one takeaway, and that's that we should put energy into things that might not last. But now I'm starting to realize that there's another huge takeaway. I think companionship and our relationships in general are really important to us. In the book Attached, they even talk about how humans are hardwired for dependency and connection. And whether that connection is with your fluffy little friend, or your kids, or maybe your mom, it's important to put energy into those relationships. So with that said, may I leave you with one last message. Thank you truly for taking the time out of your day to watch my content. Our relationship is more important to me than you could probably ever imagine. So thank you for being a part of this.